property in total?
No, actually, well, I had neighbors who called me after seeing the ad who were very upset, who were aware of the history, and wanted to know, first of all, why the ad appeared, and were worried about the neighborhood daycare. But actually, the neighborhood association as a whole has not discussed this particular case, but we do have a unanimous vote of the executive committee of the neighborhood association, which is representing the neighborhood. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Let me add a couple of, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Let me add a couple of comments just as I did to the applicant. Legally, whatever we do does not vary the covenants and restrictions. They are what they are, and I have not read them. I don't need to read them. It's not part of what we're doing. We're deciding as a matter of policy for the city whether we think daycare would be good in that location to go up to 12 children. I, for one, have heard the testimony. It sounds like it might be a decent location for that type of facility, and she's doing a good job. But even if I were to vote in favor of it, that's not to say that your deed restriction is not valid. And at some point, y'all are going to have to get together and review that, talk to the lawyers. I've known homeowner associations that have said you can't even have a traveling salesman that makes phone calls out of his home because that's a commercial enterprise. I mean, cases are all over the board on that, and we just can't get into the legal issues of that, or whether there's you can grant a variance, or you might amend that restriction, or whatever you wish to do.
And our legal counsel has suggested that this basically would go to a JP court should we decide to pursue it and see what happens from there. So, but again, that's a question that needs to be decided. But that is not the issue that we're looking at today.
Yes.
Do you know about how many family residences with children that you have in your association, your neighborhood that your association governs?
That's not a statistic that we keep. I can tell you that we have such a widely varied demographic profile in Oakhurst. We have elderly people, quite a number. We have young families with children. We have singles. We have about a 22% rate of turnover in terms of houses selling. So there's a lot of influx. But I do not know the number who belong to the association who have children.
There is then a situation where the neighborhood association should consider the changing needs of the neighborhood and addressing these families with children that need daycare.
As I say, I think that is part of the conversation that needs to occur.
Thank you.
Question?
Yes.
Clarification. Do I understand that the only reason the association is opposed to this application is because of the restrictions in the deed?
Correct. That's the basis. When I got the calls, when I talked to, we have a lawyer who lives in the neighborhood who typically is the one who's fronted these cases for us at this body and others. And he just said, well, deed restrictions, deed restrictions, deed restrictions. That is our foundation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak against this application? If not, you have 3 minutes to respond, please.
I guess my response is going to be maybe more directed towards what she said about the deeds, and I know that we'll have to work on that, but I feel like as living in Oakhurst and being a part of the association, that the neighborhood association should actually represent the whole neighborhood, not just people who created this deed 20 and 30 years ago. And I feel like I live in Oakhurst, Lisa lives in Oakhurst, so do the other people who are wanting to place their children in my care. And I think that the time has come where they need to sit down and take an account of what the whole neighborhood wants that they are supposed to be representing and make amendments to their bylaws so that we don't lose Oakhurst residents, like what Lisa Wagner was saying. They were going to have to move because there wasn't adequate child care close by. And I think they need to take a look at what the whole neighborhood association, the neighborhood needs, and then the association should actually represent the needs in the neighborhood because that's what they're supposed to be there for. And that's all I have to say. Oh, and I did have one other thing to say. If you do approve this, I also wanted to request the 5 years because it is a financial hardship to go through this process yearly, And if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. I forgot to tell you that earlier.
Thank you very much. The hearing on the case is closed. I need a motion, please.
I'd like to approve the special exceptions with the 12 children for the 5 years. I believe we've heard testimony that the area is in need of child care, and the only opposition that the neighborhood association is basing its lack of support is on the deed restrictions, and we don't enforce the deed restrictions. So that would be between the owner and the neighborhood association.
Does your motion include the other 2 variances? There are 3 requests here on this application. Oh,
I believe that there's only the special
I'm
exception.
sorry. I have a motion from Ms. Bonner. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a second from Ms. Wood. Any discussions?
Question on your motion, did it include 5 years?
Yes, it does include the 5 years.
I'm supportive of the motion, also recognizing that Oakhurst is a changing neighborhood, got a lot of younger families moving in there, and I think it's important to have child care close to the area. But even being supportive, I have a real concern about the deed restriction that applies and how you all need to work that out. And I don't know what it says, but it might even say you can't provide child care for a single child, much less 6 or 12. So you really need to focus upon that and work with the neighborhood association, and that's not our job. And I just want to make sure everybody's clear that whatever we do is not binding upon the homeowner association any more than what the homeowner association does is binding upon us. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand, please. Opposed? Motion carries. Next case, I've got BAC-06-004.